My wife stole the money I saved for surgery and spent it on a vacation with her secret lover. I can't believe I'm writing this, but I need to get it out. Maybe it'll help me make sense of everything. Or at least help someone else avoid the hell I've been living in for the past few weeks. Here goes. Last month, I woke up in the hospital, confused, scared, and in more pain than I'd ever been in. I was supposed to have had surgery that morning. A surgery I'd been saving up for over a year to pay for out of pocket. It wasn't optional either. I have a chronic condition that's been making my life miserable, and this procedure was supposed to help me get back on my feet and, well, actually live again. The weird part. When I asked the nurse why the surgery hadn't happened, she just said, "It was canceled yesterday." I assumed there had been some kind of mistake, a scheduling error or maybe even some kind of insurance issue. But the moment I checked my phone and saw an email from the hospital confirming the cancellation, which I hadn't made, my stomach dropped. Someone had called them the day before and canceled on my behalf. It wasn't me. And it sure as hell wasn't a mistake. I called my wife, my partner of 6 years and the only person I trusted enough to help me manage the logistics of the surgery. No answer. I texted her. Nothing. I even called her parents to see if she was with them. Nope. At that point, I figured maybe she was just busy or asleep, so I didn't panic. Not yet. But things got weirder when the hospital admin I spoke to told me that the payment for the surgery had bounced. Apparently, the bank transfer I'd set up to pay for the procedure, a transfer I double and triple checked weeks before, was reversed the day before the surgery was canceled. All the money I'd saved, gone. I felt like I was going to throw up. A bit of context. I've been working insane hours over the past year to save for this surgery. We're not rich, and our insurance didn't cover most of it, so every dollar mattered. I cut out every luxury I could. No eating out, no new clothes, even canceled streaming subscriptions. My wife, Rachel, was super supportive. Or at least I thought she was. She constantly reassured me, saying things like, "We're in this together, and you'll feel so much better when it's over." I trusted her completely. She helped me with budgeting, tracked the account where we kept the surgery money, and even drove me to pre-op appointments. So when I found out the payment had bounced, my first thought wasn't she stole it. Honestly, I thought I had screwed up somehow. Maybe I'd transferred the money wrong, or the bank had flagged something. But as I logged into my account to check, I noticed a massive withdrawal 2 days before the surgery. $15,000. That was all of it. Every cent I'd saved. I called Rachel again. Still no answer. By this point, I was getting worried. Maybe she'd been in an accident or something. But later that day, when I got home, her car wasn't in the driveway, and half her stuff was missing from the house. Not everything, just a few things. Her suitcase, some clothes, toiletries. At that moment, my worry turned into something else. Panic, anger, I don't even know. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking, and my mind was racing with questions I didn't want to answer. Did she leave me? Was she in trouble? Why the hell would she take the surgery money? I felt like I was in a bad dream. I tried calling her again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. I sat on the couch for hours, just staring at the withdrawal in my bank app, hoping there was some kind of explanation that would make sense. Maybe she had to take the money for an emergency. Maybe she was going to call me and explain everything. I wanted to believe that so badly. But deep down, I already knew something wasn't right. The first big clue came later that night when I was checking our shared email account to see if there were any bank notifications or messages I'd missed. That's when I saw it. A flight confirmation email sent 2 days earlier. It was for a first-class flight to a tropical resort, leaving the day before my surgery. The passenger name? Rachel. At first, I thought maybe it was for a business trip. She travels occasionally for work, and I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, she had a last-minute work thing and didn't have time to explain. I wanted to believe it so badly that I ignored the second passenger name listed on the ticket. Ethan. Ethan wasn't anyone I knew. And when I googled his name, I found his LinkedIn profile. He was an old college friend of Rachel's. My stomach dropped again, but I wasn't ready to let myself spiral into full-blown suspicion just yet. Maybe he was a coworker? Maybe they were traveling for business together. I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. But then I checked her Instagram. There it was. A photo she posted just hours after I'd been calling her nonstop. She was sitting by a pool, drink in hand, wearing sunglasses I'd never seen before and a swimsuit I definitely didn't recognize. The caption, "Much needed escape." And the person who had taken the photo. Ethan. He was tagged. His profile was private, but his bio had a picture of them together as the profile pic. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was the same woman who had held my hand in the doctor's office, who had told me we were a team, who had promised me she'd be there for me after the surgery. Now she was sipping cocktails with another man while I sat at home, trying to figure out how to pay for a surgery I couldn't afford anymore. I wish I could say I was angry at that moment, but honestly, I wasn't. I was hurt, completely shattered. I just kept thinking, how could she do this to me? How could she take everything and leave me like this? I stared at the picture for hours, hoping it would somehow disappear, hoping this was all some kind of mistake. The next day, I got an alert from my credit card company. Someone had charged $4,000 at a luxury hotel in the same city her flight was booked to. I didn't even have to guess who it was. She'd maxed out my card on top of draining our savings. That's when I finally broke down. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She had planned this. She had stolen everything from me, knowing full well what it meant. She knew I needed that surgery. She knew what I was going through. And she chose to do this anyway. I haven't heard from her since. Not a single call or text. She's completely disappeared and I have no idea what's coming next. Update. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how far this went. A few days after Rachel disappeared, I got a message that caught me completely off guard. It was from Ethan, the guy she ran off with. At first I thought it was some kind of sick joke. Why would he, the man my wife left me for, be reaching out to me? I almost didn't open the message, but curiosity got the better of me. His message started with, "I had no idea she was married. I think we need to talk." I was floored. No idea she was married? How could he not know? My brain immediately started spinning with questions. Was he lying to cover his ass? Or had Rachel really lied to him too? I replied cautiously, asking him to explain what he meant. He told me that Rachel had been seeing him for months, 8 months to be exact. They had reconnected on Instagram after she randomly liked one of his photos. She told him she was single, recently divorced, and wanted a fresh start in life. According to him, she'd spun this whole sob story about how her ex-husband, me, was controlling and manipulative and she was finally free to be herself. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Ethan and I ended up talking on the phone later that night. I was hesitant at first, but he seemed genuine. Angry, even. He admitted that he'd started to suspect something was off when Rachel became cagey about certain details of her life. For example, she refused to introduce him to any of her friends, and whenever he asked about her divorce, she changed the subject. But the final straw for him was when she suddenly asked him to go on this vacation and insisted on paying for everything herself. She told him it was her treat, because she'd recently come into some money from a family inheritance. That inheritance, of course, was my surgery fund. Hearing all of this felt surreal. I was furious at Rachel for lying to him, but also at myself for being so blind to who she really was. The person Ethan described didn't sound like the woman I married. Or maybe it was, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. Over the next few days, I started digging deeper into our financial situation. I knew about the $15,000 she'd drained from our joint account, but something told me there was more. And I was right. I found out she had secretly opened a credit card in my name months ago. She'd been racking up charges on it, mostly for luxury items, designer bags, shoes, expensive dinners. In total, she'd spent over $8,000 on that card, and I had no idea because she'd set up the statements to go to her personal email. It didn't stop there. She'd also taken out a small personal loan, again in my name, for $5,000. I felt sick to my stomach. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted, had been systematically stealing from me for almost a year. And for what? To fund her double life. At this point, I knew I couldn't handle this on my own. I reached out to a lawyer to start preparing for divorce. I didn't want to believe it, but it was clear that Rachel had been planning her escape for months. She wasn't coming back. The lawyer told me I needed to gather as much evidence as possible. Bank statements, emails, text messages, anything that could prove what she'd done. So that's exactly what I did. While going through Rachel's personal laptop, which she conveniently forgot to take with her, I found even more incriminating evidence. There were emails between her and Ethan, where she lied about everything. Our marriage, our finances, even her job. She told him she was an executive at a marketing firm, which was laughable because she'd been unemployed for the past year. She also told him she wanted to move to a new city with him and start fresh, using the inheritance as a down payment on a house. It was disgusting to read, but I kept going because I needed everything I could find. The real breaking point came when Ethan decided to confront Rachel. He told me he was going to do it, and while I wasn't sure how it would play out, I encouraged him to get the truth out of her. A couple of days later, he called me and I could hear the anger in his voice. He said Rachel had admitted to lying about almost everything. She confessed that she was married, though she tried to downplay it, saying our relationship was basically over. And when he asked about the money, she admitted it wasn't from an inheritance. The kicker? She didn't seem sorry. According to Ethan, she shrugged it off and said, "You don't get anywhere in life by playing it safe." He dumped her on the spot and left the resort early. Part of me felt vindicated hearing that she'd been exposed, but it didn't erase the damage she'd done. As the truth started to spread, I reached out to some of Rachel's friends to see if they knew anything. A few of them admitted they'd suspected something was going on but didn't want to get involved. One friend even told me Rachel had been complaining about me behind my back, saying I was too focused on work and emotionally distant. Hearing that hurt because I had been working so hard to save for the surgery, for us, for our future. Meanwhile, she was painting me as the bad guy to justify her actions. Her family wasn't much better. When I called her parents to tell them what had happened, they were shocked but not entirely surprised. Apparently, Rachel had a history of making impulsive, selfish decisions, though nothing on this scale. Her mom even told me, "I always worried she'd do something like this someday." Gee, thanks for the warning. Right now, I'm in the middle of sorting out the financial mess Rachel left behind. Between the stolen money, the fraudulent credit card, and the personal loan, I'm looking at tens of thousands of dollars in debt. My lawyer is optimistic that I'll be able to recover some of it, but it's going to be a long, uphill battle. As for Rachel, she's completely ghosted me. She hasn't reached out once, and honestly, I don't want to hear from her. I don't think there's anything she could say that would make this better. The person I thought she was doesn't exist. Final update. After I found out about Rachel's financial betrayal, I thought the worst I'd have to deal with was the $15,000 she stole and the $8,000 she racked up on the secret credit card she opened in my name. But as I worked with my lawyer to gather all the evidence, we uncovered something even more horrifying. Rachel had been systematically draining my personal savings account for months. I hadn't noticed because I rarely touched that account. It was meant for emergencies only. She took nearly $20,000 from it, in small increments over time, to avoid raising suspicion. In total, the financial damage she caused was over $40,000. I felt completely blindsided. How could someone I trusted with my life not only betray me emotionally but also leave me in a financial hole I might not climb out of for years? With my lawyer's help, I filed for divorce and began the process of trying to recover the money she stole. But here's the thing. Rachel had disappeared. She wasn't responding to texts, calls, or emails, and as far as I could tell, she wasn't staying with family or friends. It was like she'd gone off the grid. The lawyer explained that we'd have to serve her the divorce papers in order to proceed, but without knowing her location, that was going to be a challenge. I decided to hire a private investigator to track her down. It felt extreme, but at that point I had no other choice. The investigator found out she was staying in a different city, living in an Airbnb under a fake name. She was clearly trying to hide. When we finally served her the papers, her response was as cold as it gets. "Do whatever you want, I don't care." She didn't show up for the initial court proceedings, which delayed everything further. It was like she didn't care about the damage she'd caused, emotionally or financially. But I was determined not to let her get away with it. While all this was happening, I decided to tell my side of the story to people in our lives, mutual friends, co-workers, and even some of her family members. I felt like I had to, especially since Rachel had been spreading lies about me to justify her actions. I wanted people to know the truth. I posted a detailed account of what she'd done on social media, complete with screenshots of texts, emails, and evidence of the money she'd stolen. I didn't do it to be petty, though I won't lie, it felt satisfying. I did it because I wanted people to understand the level of betrayal I'd experienced. The post went semi-viral in our social circle. The public fallout was swift. Rachel's reputation was destroyed. People she'd considered close friends cut ties with her. Even her family, who'd tried to stay neutral at first, turned their backs on her when they saw the evidence of what she'd done. I don't feel good about ruining someone's life, but honestly, she made her bed. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Rachel reached out to me. After months of silence, she sent me a long, rambling email. She claimed she'd made a mistake and wanted to talk things out. At first I didn't want to respond. What could she possibly say to justify her actions? But curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet her in a public place to hear her out. When I saw her, I barely recognized her. She looked disheveled, like someone who'd been on the run for months. She told me she was sorry for what she'd done but then immediately tried to justify it. She said she'd felt trapped in our marriage and wanted a way out. She admitted she had planned to leave me for Ethan, but when he found out the truth about her, he dumped her. She laughed bitterly and said, "I guess I overplayed my hand." She also admitted that she'd spent the last of the stolen money on the Airbnb she'd been hiding in. She was broke, homeless, and desperate. Part of me felt sorry for her, but then I remembered everything she'd put me through. I told her I wanted nothing to do with her and walked away. The last straw came when I learned that Rachel had tried to manipulate one of my close friends into lending her money. She told them some sob story about how I'd abandoned her and left her with nothing. Thankfully, my friend saw through her lies and told me about it immediately. That's when I decided to take the final step. I went back to court and filed for a restraining order against her. I didn't want her anywhere near me or the people I cared about. The judge granted it, and for the first time in months I felt like I had some control over my life again. Now that the dust has settled, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. The surgery I'd been saving for is back on the table, thanks to a loan from a family member who stepped in to help me. I've also started going to therapy to process everything that happened. As for Rachel, I have no idea where she is and I honestly don't care. The person I thought I married doesn't exist. She was a lie, just like everything else about her.